non-ionizing radiation, okay, is the key to protection. This is done by staying away from the source. So some people, when they put food in the microwave, they stand inside the microwave. This is, I'm sorry, this is not smart. We have to be far a bit, except if it's a very limited area, and limit the time. Minimizing the exposure time. Sometimes in nuclear accidents, we let people inside the reactor to do things, and I'm telling you, you're allowed to stay there for 2 minutes. How do I calculate this? I know the amount of radiation that's being emitted, I know what he did before, and I'm monitoring his dose. Okay? At the same time, stopping radiation before it reaches people, definitely it's strongly recommended to wear sunglasses, hats, and whatever when you are protecting yourself from the UV of the sun, in addition to the sun protection. And we know now SP, what does it mean? It's protection like the skin. The 3 principles, gentlemen, that we use for this, number 1, the distance. You will be surprised if this watch is radioactive, and I'm here, and I'm a very serious case. If I move 1 meter back, I'm reducing the risk by 75%. If it's 2 meters, I'm 75% of the 25. 3 meters, I'm 75% from the 12.5. Okay? So the more distance that I have, the more protected, even if I don't have any protective gear. So distance is very, very important from the source of radioactivity. If you have a radioactive source, one of you told me you have a radioactive source inside one of the devices, when it's being changed, we kick everybody out. Only the person that's working on it and maybe a helper is allowed inside. Everybody should be outside. Remember when we are doing X-ray, what do? We adjust everything and we tell you don't move, and they go to another room and they press the button, so they are protected. If you are doing a dental X-ray, the dentist gives you the bottle in your hand and he and his helper goes outside. Okay? These are the principles. Increase the distance, increase the protection. Reduce the time. So 1 minute, 2 minutes can be the difference between life and death. It can be limiting the time, and of course put a barrier. We will know now about the barrier, but in general, alpha particles can be presented or prevented by a sheet of paper or a shirt. Beta particles, they need something like lead or plexiglass. What's plexiglass? It's plastic plus glass composite. Okay? The others, they will need concrete or a thicker beryllium lead. The thickest, to protect yourself against everything, half a meter of concrete. Half meter to 1 meter of concrete. These are the bunkers for nuclear wars. Okay? Concrete will prevent everything. Fortified concrete, of course. So, talking about this, let's go. Radioactivity is what? Emission of energy that can be in form of light, which is waves, or it can be in particles. This is the byproduct of things. So what do we get out of this? Remember, alpha radiations, it's 2 positive, 2 proton, and 2 neutrons, which are neutral. High energy electron, that's beta radiation. High energy electromagnetic photon can be gamma rays. Some of them also can be X-rays, and there is a minute difference between both, but both of them can cause trouble. Radioactive substance also exists in the oil and gas industry. Tomorrow, or maybe today, we'll be talking about NOMS in a little bit of details, but oil and gas is a serious industry. Any industry that have mining, coal, radioactive, let me say precious stones, non-precious stones, raw material that you dig from inside a well, or you break it from a mountain, it means that there is radioactivity and NOMS inside. Although, okay, we know that there are known hazards, but with protection, we can work with all our lives and have zero danger. Only if we take the proper measures and we take care of the things. So, the type of radiation differs. If you recall when we said the alpha, beta, and gamma, gamma is the most serious. So depending on the type of radiation there, I have to visualize or to work on my protection mechanism. So, there is another word that we use in radioactivity a lot. This is coming from the International Atomic Agency. It's called ALARA. As low as reasonably achievable. We'll keep on repeating until the end of tomorrow. As low as reasonably achievable. It started with radioactivity, but any hazardous or toxic material or risk management sometimes using this word. As low as reasonably achievable. Okay? These types of radiation, non-ionizing, ionizing, we added to them the naturally occurring radioactive material or known, because it's very important and people don't know about it. Maybe people know about uranium, but no one knows if I dig a well, okay, that I will get norms out, that this can lead to issues. So, protection and principle of protection. Limiting exposure time. For people working in radiation in a natural background, in other words, oil and gas, raw material, or so, the dose needs to be reduced and monitored to reduce the risk of any illness or any accumulation by limiting the exposure. As I told you in the process of the distance, getting away from the fire. If you are in front of a fire during a barbecue, you can get burned. If you are 1 meter, probability of getting burned is much less. If you are 10 meters, zero, almost zero. Okay, shielding, its barriers, these are the concepts. We can sometimes use high water, running water or high pressure water to remove the issue. We can use concrete, as I told you, or we can use lead. Lead prevents radioactivity. Most of the radioactive isotopes, the small ones that you get, are in lead containers or plexiglass. Okay? Why? Because they prevent these penetrating radiations or ionizing radiations from entering our body. Containment of the source. Containing a source means covering it. If you recall the Chernobyl that we've seen in the morning, what did they do? They have a concrete house around it. When it started to fade or not working well, they've done a 3 billion structure of concrete, or fortified concrete of steel, in order to cover it full. When you cover it, still there is radioactivity, but it's contained inside a closed site, no risk to the people. When we were talking about storage, that's another principle. Why do you put radioactive isotopes in a faraway area? To prevent any risk to people and restrict the access and market radioactive. No one is allowed inside except with restricted access, and he or she should be protected fully before getting into the process. More or less, time is very important, as we said. There is a direct relation between the time of exposure and the radiation dose. Radiation is working, it's getting out. If I stay 1 minute, I will get 1%, 2 minutes, 3%, and so on. The more time I stay, the more hazard that I am in. So in your radiation control plan, or the plan that's being done for the company, it needs to reduce the individual radiation dose while reducing the time he or she is subjected to this. Okay? Individual dose shall be also monitored, and we'll be discussing this tomorrow, by TLD or whatever, some devices like pagers that we put here to monitor what's ever being happened, whether in the environment or into the body. The second pillar is distance, and as we know, increasing the distance between the radiation source, same like heat source, and a human being is much recommended. Why? Because it will reduce the exposure to the limit. So, occupational environment monitoring. In other words, if you have any radiation source, you will see that there are lots of checks, and sometimes there are monitoring working 24/7 to check if there is any leak or any problem. How do you monitor it? Same like transportation, we have a moving test. Let us say that this is radioactive. I don't transport it as such. I might put it in 3-4 containers together to contain whatever radiation is coming out, and then I ship. When I'm shipping it, and you will see this in the movie, I should reduce the probability of it falling or shaking or whatever. Why? Because any accident here can release radioactivity into the process. So, physical barriers are the most important concept. What's a physical barrier? This chair is a barrier between me and you. So physical barrier that covers my body, shields my body from anything coming. Okay? This definitely control areas like storage areas and whatever, and it needs to be supervised either physically or electronically. Most of the places, they make it in a closed area, and they put a fence around it, and they put clear marks of radioactivity on the fence. So remember, when we're going to a hospital and you pass by the X-ray department, you will see the door is always closed, it's never opened. Plus it has a clear mark, keep away, authorized people only, danger, radioactivity. I think all of us have seen it. This is a principle of protection. So in normal operating conditions, we need the dose to be as low as possible. Forget this and keep, when we measure it at 100 or 0.1 meter, which is 10 centimeter away from any accessible source. Funnel, we'll talk about it tomorrow, Federal Authority of Nuclear, let me say, activity or energy. So routine occupational environment scanning and monitoring is very important to validate that your barriers are working. Some people, I remember one of the cases, and it was very famous, it was made in a movie also. There are nuclear submarines, and all the air flight carriers are also having a nuclear, let me say, engine. You know this. Why? It's a small reactor that produces high amount of heat, uses the same concept, creates steam. Instead of having diesel burning, okay, to make the engine move, I'm making the steam move the engine. Same like the old concept that we had in trains, but in a very high force. So why do we use these ones, although they are hazardous? We use them because they can allow the submarine or the ship to stay 1 year with 2 kilos of uranium inside the sea. There is a continuous source of energy that's being there. The problem is, if God forbid something bad happens inside the sea, what do? If you see the submarine, there are lots of containment doors. This is the concept. So if there is flooding or there is any nuclear problem, you close the door so that you contain it inside. Whether it's flooding from water so that you prevent the submarine from, let me say, falling or merging into water, submerging, or drowning, or you prevent the leakage of the thing. All of this is talking about control and how I need to keep everything in the right place, in the safe, to protect human lives. Risk management is a concept that we'll be talking tomorrow, but in principle, what should be your target need out of risk management? The most important thing is to protect human lives. Whatever billions you pay